All right. How's everybody doing today?
Great.
Ooh. It sounds like you were still at 9 a.m. Okay. It is 1. How is everybody doing today?
Great.
Great. That still was terrible to me. I've been up since 4 a.m. preparing for this and doing a couple other assignments, and then I had 2 daughters who just refused to wake up this morning for school because their life is so hard and they do not want to go to school. Okay. One doesn't want to go to 1st grade, the other one doesn't want to go to 5th grade. And if I have energy, I'm sure you should have some as well. So I'm going to say that again. How's everybody doing today?
Great!
All right, that was a lot better. Good welcome. I like that. My name is Alphonso Amos, and I just want to just give a quick introduction about myself, and then we'll go into the topic that I kind of chose for today because I think is really important. I am a Port Huron native. I grew up in the city of Port Huron. Kind of moved away when I was in high school. Moved back to the area my sophomore year of college. Kind of got involved in the area as just volunteering for local organizations, really just getting active. I became the president of the Port Huron branch of the NAACP when I was about 20. From there, I decided to run for city council. Ran for city council, didn't win. Bummer, right? I was crazy enough to run again, still didn't win. Bummer again. Then somebody died on the council. Bummer, real bummer, because the person who passed away was a great mentor of mine. I still didn't get the seat because somebody else was given the seat and the opportunity to sit on that council. But lo and behold, she resigned, and it was my turn. And so I had the opportunity to sit on the Port Huron City Council, really working as an advocate for social change and social justice. As I said up there, worked on issues for communities that are generally forgotten in the city of Port Huron. Sometimes we hear about downtown and we hear about great developments on the north end, and we kind of forget the low-income community in the south end of town or mid-town areas. And so I really worked hard as a council member for that. Ran again in this last election, and we know that some of the voters who just drove out weren't going to vote for me anyway, but I just ran and didn't win. But 2018 is around the corner, and I'm praying. So far, my chief of staff, aka my wife, is in full control of what that looks like. But outside of that, I also am a Young People For Fellow, which I just want to talk about a little bit before I get started, because I love getting in a room full of millennials. It's phenomenal because I'm a millennial, and when I get around other millennials, it just sparks something in me. So I'm a part of a fellowship program called Young People For. And that fellowship program is really a national long-term leadership development program for college students or college folks, because we don't limit ourselves on age. As long as you're in college, you're kind of considered in the age group. That helps them identify social issues or areas in which they want to change. Do we have anyone in the room who loves to change the world? We got one? Couple people? All right, you should put those hands up proud if you want to change the world, because I am on the team of changing the world. Well, Young People For offers a platform for us to do that. I am a 2017 fellow, which means this is my first year in the fellowship. It's generally a 2-year fellowship. And so right now I'm developing a blueprint. My blueprint is focused on the area of mentor programs in the community for young boys and girls of color. Mainly because we don't really have too many avenues or resources that really identify some of our needs. In that, I also am working to on a model where we don't look for a seat at anybody's table as millennials, but we create our own damn tables. So that is my model. We don't look for a seat at the table, we create our own table. And so that's what I'm doing with Young People For. I will have a sign-up sheet if you want more information on that. I'll have it passed around right now. Even if you don't want more information, just put your name down so I can at least get points for giving that plug today. Just put a star if you don't really want us to email you. Just sign it anyway. Again, I like to say that when I do social justice activities or talk about diversity and inclusion, first I like to always give a moment of silence to the Aboriginal people and our indigenous people whose land we occupy. And so right now, we occupy the land of the Chippewa Saginaw natives. And so I just want to give a quick moment of silence for them, if we can bow our heads for a moment of silence. All right. Also in my introduction, I always love to say what my gender pronoun is, because a lot of times when we talk about inclusion, we forget to be inclusive as we talk about gender pronouns. So you'll always hear me say, how is everybody doing? I could have said, hey guys, what's going on? And then I would have excluded a population of women in the room, or whatever you identify as. So again, I'll introduce that again. I'm Alphonso Amos. My gender pronoun is he, him, his. I am considered an African American male. And I am a Christian. So when we talk about diversity and inclusion, I like to put that out there because a lot of times we exclude ourselves from different religious backgrounds, everything like that. I am confrontational. I'm not like Mr. Eckler. I am out of control when it comes to social justice work. I don't care what people say or think. I'm a Christian and I love the LGBTQ community. I'm a Christian and I love Muslims. I'm a Christian and I just love everybody. I love the snot out of everybody. It's just the way I am. One of the things that I like to focus on the aspect of diversity, and sometimes we get into settings and we hear that word diversity all the time, and we think we have a diverse background, or we think because we come into a room full of people who don't look like us, that is diversity. I want to dispel that myth and say that is false. That is false. And we do it at the college a lot. On one of the committees I sit in, we're doing great, we're diverse, but we have a huge population who all thinks the same. So when you think about diversity, also think about the mindset of the people. Because I can be black, and a black Christian who goes to a Baptist church with a whole bunch of white Baptists who all think the same. When you see me at the church, it looks like the church is diverse, right? But the aspect of diversity goes beyond just me being black in the white church. It goes to the mindset and how I think. And I always tell people, if I'm in a room full of people that all think like me, I'm running the hell out of it. I'm gone. I don't want to be in a room full of people who all think the way I think. I want to be in a room full of people who challenge me, who look different. I'll use a story really quick. I'm a part of another program called Freedom Writers, and it's a program with an educator. Her name is Erin Ruel. It's a movie based off of her students, and I am what we call a certified freedom writer teacher, participating in the training and the cohorts. And going into it, I live in Port Huron, and so sometimes our inner circles in Port Huron are not as diverse as we would hope. So going into it, you have this Christian guy who just is really a little closed-minded on the road a little bit. And I go into this training, and the first person I meet is this young lady. Well, she identifies as a woman, so I can say that. A young lady who happens to be a lesbian young lady. Anybody ever seen Orange is the New Black? Anybody know Big Boo? She looks just like Big Boo.
Yes.
And so me and her just interacting, and I'm kind of a little in my shell a little bit, and we're having this conversation. And next thing you know, this awesome friendship sparks, to where the next time we went to a training, she was my roommate. And then the next time we just kept being roommates. And we kept offering this ideas and concepts. And I started learning more from her about the LGBT community. And she started learning more about God from me. And so our relationship merged to the point where we are like BFFs for life. She lives in Texas, and I'm trying to get to Texas to go see her. She just won Teacher of the Year in her school, in her whole, out of the state of Texas. And so I'm trying to just go and work with her. But in that, if I was closed-minded on the aspect of developing relationships and being inclusive, I would have never had the opportunity to meet this awesome person who would give me the shirt off of their back. And so when we talk about diversity, I used this last week. I was speaking to another class here at SE4. I said you have to re-educate yourself. When we talk about inclusion, it's not enough to include somebody because they look different than you. It's more to be an ally of the person you're including. Again, earlier during the presentation, we talked about some things that go on here at SE4, and really feeling a little alienated when we don't want to have conversations about race relations, especially what's going on in the nation. But those same people who will tell you to your face that they support or they'll tell you to your face that there is no stories or no issues on campus, are also behind closed doors sharing the issues with other people because we know that there's issues. I can share an issue that was shared at a committee, and it was funny, we get emails that say there's no issues when there was an issue with a Muslim student here on campus, where their car was egged. Right at the beginning of the Trump era, their car was egged, and they were followed home. So when we talk about issues not happening, we talk about being inclusive. We can't alienate the issues. We say we support, we want to be diverse. We want a diverse campus. The biggest one for me at SE4, and I said it to the group that I meet with here on campus all the time, is we want a diverse campus, but your board of trustees doesn't reflect the people in which you want to include. We want a diverse campus, but you have yet to reach out to your students to create an advisory council to where they're advising the board members and board of trustees at your campus. We have a predominantly black basketball team, but you don't have great representation in your staff of African American males. We're not doing an effective job of including that and making sure it's a part of an agenda. So as young people, as millennials, my change agents, our job is to not gripe and complain about it. It's to fix it. It's to go in and fix it. Well, how do you fix it? I could say go in and dismantle the whole damn system. That would sound good, right? And we're going to take this fort by storm. But it's ways in which you do it. I use the issues that I have with the statues. Anybody familiar with the topic of the statues that people are fighting to get taken down, such as Robert E. Lee, Christopher Columbus, who never actually discovered America, but neither here nor there. When we talk about issues like the Robert E. Lee statue, and we talk about the young lady in Durham, North Carolina, who actually went to jail because she just decided to take the statue down herself. Although I agree that the statues should be taken down, I don't agree with the method of just taking them down yourself. So when we talk about how do we get involved in the conversation, I like the ideas and I like to take notes, so I kind of took a couple notes over there on some of the things you all were saying about organizing, the coursework, creating clubs, really teaching young people younger. So, on the topic, who actually said to teach young people younger? I can't remember who said that. Oh, she left. Okay, that was a great concept, great idea. But whose responsibility is it to teach the younger generation? Is it our parents, our grandparents, the teachers that are already acting as social workers and case managers and moms and dads in those elementary schools, middle schools, high schools? Or is it up to us to create programming to make sure we educate those young kids on tolerance? It's us, right? And so, when I talk about making an impact in the world and being a change agent, that's what I mean. You go deep inside and you come up with those ideas. When we talk about coursework, if we want to see coursework talking about culture and diversity and inclusion, it shouldn't be up to your professor to create that coursework. It should come from within inside of you. And you should be at the table, create your own table, and say, this is the group, this is what we want to do for this coursework. Can you be the avenue to teach this coursework? But this is what we discovered. And so, I just wanted to encourage you on that, because those were some really great ideas that I just started leaping in my insides, like, yes, these people in this room are on to something. Now as I got into diversity and inclusion, I want to get on the elephant in the room a lot of times from any conversation, and that's racism. How many of you in this room believe racism still exists? Okay. How many of you have seen racism in action? Okay. Everybody close your eyes on this question. Everybody close your eyes. No eyes open. How many of you have participated in some form of stereotyping, discrimination, racism yourself? Okay? How many many of you have witnessed it and said nothing? You never spoke up to the people who were having those racist jokes or comments, okay? You put your hands down and you could open your eyes. I asked those questions just to get a filler of the room, but most importantly to get you all to understand that number one, when we talk about race, you're not alone. When we talk about stereotyping and discriminating, you're not alone. It's not just a black problem or a white problem or a Muslim problem or a Mexican problem or a Latinx problem. It is in all of our problems. And when we talk about ways to change the culture, again, it starts with us. Michael Jackson had a song called Man in the Mirror. One of my favorite songs, because I used to think I was going to be MJ one day until I realized I couldn't sing. But the song itself talks about how we look at ourselves in order to change the world we live in. And so one of the challenges that I have when we talk about racism, and we know that racism is essentially a learned behavior. You can be born black, white, Latinx, Asian, and love. But somewhere down the line, we use what we call a blank piece of paper you start off with. There are things that you start to get filled with, whether it's through your friends, your family, whether it's through hurt. I have people who are racist, mainly because they were hurt. So it's also important when we talk about racism and marginalization and any topic, whether it's with the LGBT community, we have to understand, number one, the root causes of some of those things for certain people. And everyone is different. And so how we tackle that is by looking at ourselves and how we respond. How we respond. I'll use an example. We know the struggle is real out here in these streets, right? When it comes to money. It's hard, you know. I'm talking to college students. We work jobs all the time, and I work a job, and I serve tables. Occasionally, I do the managing and marketing, and for some side money, I serve tables. And on this job, I get racist statements all the time. Number one, in my mind, I'm thinking these people are nuts. I will never be mean or ignorant to someone who's serving my food because I have no idea what they're doing with my food when they're not in front of me. Like, that's the number one thing. But the other day, I had a moment, and I was given a table, and it was two ladies. They were older, and I go to the table, and I'm polite and I'm nice, and again, you don't make assumptions just because of age, because that's age discrimination. And I'm sitting there, and they look up, and you can tell right then and there that it wasn't going to be a great experience for me. So I decided to keep trying and be polite and kind. And so as I'm serving these ladies, number one, how many millennials in here have been told that we are the entitled generation? You're told we're the entitled generation. False. Okay? Because these ladies came in and we don't have just romaine lettuce, and they demanded that they just get romaine lettuce on their salad. I'm like, it's already kind of pre-mixed in there. I don't know. So we decided to have our cooks pick out all the non-romaine lettuce for these entitled ladies. Which seems to be absurd, but we want to please them, and I want to make them happy because it's just my job. And serve them, they eat their food, and next thing you know, it just is like, boy, this wasn't all romaine lettuce. And you know you should have gave us all romaine lettuce. And so I'm smiling. If I just could hit an old lady, I would love to right now. And so at this point, if my face could turn red, it would be beet red. And so I'm so angry and frustrated. And so I went to the back, and I'm like, somebody needs to get out there because I can't do it. My manager's talking to me, and he's like, just go out there, let them know we'll take care of their food. So now I'm even more mad because now they're treating me bad, and then we're going to pay for the food? Like, what sense does that make? So we give them dessert, and we do all of that. And to top it off, the slap in the face, they didn't tip me but they tipped my coworker, the white young lady who helped them use their cell phone. Granted, she gave me the tip anyway. Made me furious. So instead of being upset and ranting about it on Facebook and going about it in the app in a way that could have just went crazy, I could have probably went viral. Okay? Because that's how mad I was. I probably could have. She was in the wheelchair and she was facing the ramp. I could have unlocked her wheelchair and she could have rolled down the ramp and hit the wall at the end of the bathroom. It came to my mind. I'm just being transparent and honest. It went through my mind. I was like, I can just unlock her wheelchair right now and she'd go rolling down here and I get the last laugh. But no, I was kind. I was polite. One of them had left their cane in their jacket as they were leaving. Noticing that, I got their stuff, I dashed outside. Ma'am, you're forgetting something. And I can tell right there from that instance, something clicked in the one lady because she started to apologize for the way they were acting. And she started to be appreciative. And so I don't know if that changed forever, her view of race, and what was going on in her mind. But for me, and how I responded to it, because I could have let her stuff go into the lost and found box, or threw it in the dumpster and acted like we didn't leave it there. I could have done all of the above. But how I responded gave a better reflection of myself. And so what I did was I went and talked to each of my coworkers. And I shared the story with them. And by me sharing the story with them, they're going to go and share that story with their family. When we encounter issues of race, it's important not to be silent about it, but to speak up, but to also share those stories with our inner circles. Because sometimes people may never think you encounter any racist acts. They may never think they exist. We heard about it earlier, but we don't think anything's going on this campus. Everything's fine. But the underlying issues people may face, some of the things people may hear. I have another colleague. This colleague is just, anybody ever encountered just working with dumb people? Anybody ever encountered people just asking dumb questions? And I know when we're in elementary, middle school, and high school, and even college, raise your hands, there's no such thing as dumb questions. When we get to the workforce and we get into real life, I scratch that. Like, that's a dumb question. Okay. So, another colleague I work with, I'm just sharing a couple stories really quick. She just asked some of the dumbest questions ever. And I had to come to the conclusion that she doesn't realize that her questions are dumb and her jokes are racist. And so my approach on her is every time she gets ready to open her mouth, before she can say anything, I have to tell her it's going to be a racist joke. I don't care what the joke is anymore, because when she opens up her mouth, whether it's about Mexicans or blacks, her jokes are just genuinely racist. I'm like, Chrissy, don't say nothing. Just sit and be quiet. And she doesn't do it intentionally, which at first I would get so mad. I got to the point where like I literally wanted to get her fired. Like, she is getting on my nerves, she has all these jokes. And so again, when we talk about racism, we also have to understand the importance of knowing where people are coming from. And how do we get to know that? We actually get to know the people. Racism is only going to be defeated if we reach across our classrooms, our neighborhoods, our communities, and we get to know people. So I know Chrissy. I know she's not being intentional, but it's also my job to check her at the door and say, hey, you can't say that. That was sexist, that was racist, that was discriminating. And then she learns from me. And so, I have a video, when I talk about racism being a learned behavior, I actually was preparing for this today, and my timeline is filled with stuff that people share. And this video that I seen today, and excuse the language, was very disturbing because we look at the age of the individual in this video and some of the behavior that he's being taught. Let me play that video.
you dang clowns that wanna fuck with me, I'll fuck you up! Fuck you up! Nigger! You come near me, you're gonna face for a tomahawk! Nigger! Throw this thing right in your fucking face! Wanna go knife battle? I'll fucking knife battle you! God's fucking scary! I'll fuck you up! Nigger! Don't fucking come near me. You're gonna face full of lead.
So this morning I happened to click play. And hear those words ringing from the lips of someone so young. In my eyes, so precious. Broke me. Because we see what people are teaching their children. And we go throughout our days, sometimes as if nothing is wrong. And when we look at that video, the first thing that came to my mind was Dylan Ruth, the young man who shot up the church in Charlottesville, in Charleston, sorry. And how he was technically written off as just being a troubled young person. And when we look at issues of white supremacy and where they stem from learned behaviors like that video. It breaks my heart. I was at the panel conversation one day, and the president of our Port Huron branch, our current president, talked about racism, and he talked about breeding it out and how we're going to have so many mixed children and life's going to be sunshine and rainbows. But yet we have young people who are being taught to never breed outside of their race. They're being taught to hate. And how do we overcome hate? Dr. Martin Luther King said, darkness cannot drive out darkness, but light has to drive out darkness. And see, so the light that we have has to come from within each and every one of us. Has to be light that says, I need to shine awareness to that family member who cracks jokes all the time about black people. I have to shine light to that family member who may crack a joke and call a Mexican a wetback. How do we change the mindsets of people? It's through loving each other. Taking the steps to say, you know what? I'm going to go and I'm going to get to know, what's your name?
Taylor.
Taylor? I'm going to go and get to know Taylor. She may look different than me. She may not have come from the same background as me. But I'm actually going to go get to know her. I'm going to see what she's about. And so when I talk about racism, there are two different approaches that we can go on racism. And so far I've talked about it at an individual basis. Because we have individual racism and we have institutionalized racism. And those are two different things. One is about yourself and based on yourself. The other one is systematic. And we see it when we talk about the school to prison pipeline. We see institutional racism when we talk about increasing the age of children who are charged as adults. Michigan is one of 5 states that still charges 17-year-olds as an adult. Anybody in here ever do something stupid when you were 17? You just didn't get caught? All right. Imagine doing something stupid like going to go buy an ounce of weed getting busted for it, being tried as an adult. In some counties, a felony. Because you have a felony, you can't get your Pell Grant money to go to college. Because you can't get Pell Grant money to go to college, you are now forced into what we call low wage paying jobs, or you're forced to kind of do what other people in your community have done, and that's get it how you get it, by any means necessary. And so what we see when we talk about institutional racism, we see issues like that all the time. And it's like a revolving door. When we talk about how we overcome systems, how do we make sure that marginalized people have health care? Something as simple as health care that we're fighting about, even right now in our nation. That how do we make sure that no matter what your skin color is, no matter what your financial status is, that you have adequate resources in your community? I like to use a story when we talk about race, and we talk about also classism in there as well. I like to group that in there because sometimes we don't understand people's struggles. And I always use this phrase, and I've actually got somebody put it on a t-shirt, so don't try to steal it or copyright it. Your perception of people is not their reality. Your perception of people is not their reality. Sometimes we look at people and we kind of have our own perception of them. I'll use my example because it's personal to me. If it was summertime right now, and it's already hot in this room right now, and it's like cold outside, and it was 90 degrees, and you came in this room with a trench coat on, mainly a white male, just going to give my ignorance a little bit, show you how I used to think. I would think you probably were about to shoot the room up. You're crazy. Why you got that trench coat on? What are you hiding under that trench coat? Let me come sit next to you, homie. Let me see what you got. Your pockets, run your pockets. And so sometimes our perception of people kind of is a little messed up. I remember after 9/11, my first time flying, they set me next to a Muslim. And when I say full-fledged Muslim, had a hijabi, they were ready. He was reading his Quran. And I'm like, you can't even go pee. Because if you go pee, I'm coming with you. I don't trust you. My perception was not that man's reality. He was not necessarily a terrorist just because he looked a certain way. And so I had to come to the realization to overcome that mindset by getting to know some Muslims. Get to know some Muslims. I also, I went to high school, I said that earlier, I went to high school in Georgia, and a lot of Latinx individuals in Georgia. And so I got a chance to actually get to know the different cultures of the Latinx community. We have the Dominicans, the Puerto Ricans, the Mexicans, the El Salvadorians. And so I got to actually understand that. But my perception was originally because I had family members who will always talk about how the illegals are taking their jobs. So my perception was my friend in high school's dad is probably working somewhere that my dad could be working while he's unemployed, stealing the jobs. So automatically, if you were Latinx, I thought you were an illegal immigrant. Until I got to know some really cool Latinx individuals who were actually legal. And they were documented. And they weren't stealing jobs because, quite frankly, my dad wasn't going to get up at 6 a.m. in the morning and hop on that little van in the group and go work on the roof all day, because that was just not his area of expertise. Same thing when we look at right now in our country, when we talk about, and we reverted back to that, they're taking our jobs. They're going in and they're taking our jobs and they're doing things that we necessarily really don't want to do, and that's why my fruit is high right now, and we haven't had any occasional citruses picked in Florida, because people aren't going out and getting those jobs and wanting to do those jobs. But we have that perception and that mindset that this is how we're going to fight racism. We're going to push it out. We're going to push these people out. We're going to keep being racist, even more racist, to fight racism because we're making America great again. I said to myself one day, if America is only great because of Americans and a particular race of America, then we're not great at all. I also had to tell myself that if we were to make America great again, from the mindset and the avenues that a lot of our white supremacists and neo-Nazi individuals are making it, that would make me have to take a back seat on the bus and give up my seat for a white man or woman. That would make me go back to the plant, and my ancestors go back to the plantation to picking cotton. Because, you know, we have all these, and again, back to the statue conversation, we have all these statues up of these great leaders who did so much great stuff. I rarely see any statues of people of color who built this. We built the White House. We built most of the historic buildings in many communities. And we built them for free. Like, nobody paid my ancestors. Some of the buildings that we see that are historic, if my ancestors were paid, I'm just going to let y'all know right now, I probably wouldn't be standing here talking to you. I would probably be on my own little island somewhere because we would actually be rolling in some bank. I got some money right now. But we look at that and we look at the term and we look at all that's going on in our nation about making America great. America's only great because of the individuals that it includes. America's only great because I can go and talk to somebody who is a Protestant or a Muslim. I can go and talk about my religious freedoms. And I can have a conversation with somebody who may not be the same sexual orientation as me or the same skin color. And that's how I feel my America, because everybody has their own viewpoint of what their America is great. Again, I love being around the young people. Because you all are the ones who are going to change the mindset of your friends, the mindset of your educators, the mindset of your college president. But it's up to you. And you can't sit around waiting for another summit or seminar. You can't sit around hoping that some legislation is going to come through, because legislation is not the answer. No matter how much I love legislation and I love politics, we can't legislate our way out of hate. I can go to Port Huron City Council, which I have a resolution prepared as we look at diversity and inclusion, making sure we're a more inclusive city, and I can give them that resolution. But the resolution really means nothing if the people aren't going to go and affect change and actually push to make a difference. I can come up with 1,000,001 resolutions right now for this campus. When we talked about having marginalized individuals and people feeling marginalized and having things done to them that are racist or hateful or discriminatory, you actually have nowhere to actually, except for the little suggestion box that's over there, that's just a general suggestion box. You have nowhere to go to feel safe and have a safe space to talk to somebody about that. Why? Because you don't have a director of diversity and inclusion on your campus. That's an easy fix, right? Sounds good. But it's really up to us to actually make that happen. It's up to us to say, hey, I don't really like the fact that I have nobody to go to talk about these issues. And I don't care what the issue is. It can be that you feel oppressed because of your weight size. Somebody can be making you feel uncomfortable and talking about you, and you have no avenue to really go and talk about that. That already is a red flag to me. But it's really up to you all in the room, in any space you occupy. It's up to you to actually go out and make the difference. Because I can sit in my Global Diversity Advisory Council with that long name. I wish they would change the name. long name. I can sit in that meeting every month and get nowhere. When I was on city council, one of the biggest things that I would tell people, and I would tell all of the residents, is if you never call and you never show up, nobody ever gives a damn. If you don't make noise, nobody cares. We had an issue. They were getting ready to close down a couple of the fire stations. They wanted one central fire station. And boy, did we hear it. I think people's grandparents who were firefighters 100 years ago started coming out of nowhere. I was like, dang, I didn't even know we had this much support for the fire department. We only had any fires. But the support came out and their voices were heard because they came out in numbers. We talked about solutions in the last lecture. Solutions are within you. The numbers that you can pull together with your classmates, with your teammates, with individuals that you are on clubs with the people who you are texting and tweeting and Snapchatting. Social media is a whole other movement. Social media campaigns are how I get most of my work done. Again, I work with young people. I'm an executive director for an organization called Impact Youth Services. And we're a startup nonprofit, so we're only in phase 2. We're year 2. We are actually in a co-working space called Loft 912 right downtown Port Huron. And we work heavily on recruiting mentors for young boys and girls, mentor/femtors. Let me make sure that is perfectly clear. We want to make sure we are gender inclusive as well. And so we recruit them, we match young people in a one-on-one match using the Big Brothers Big Sisters concept. And then we also have a category called youth organizing, where we train young people to, again, not create a seat at the table, but create your own table. And we give you a platform, and we work on public speaking if that's your area you need to work on. And we work on whatever it is you need to do to make sure whatever vision or idea or concept you have comes to fruition. And then, of course, we have our youth advocacy department, who primarily works on issues such as raise the age Michigan and things like that. We work with Michigan League of Public Policy on that. And I do all of this, and we're going to play a guessing game because I just want to let you know how important you are and how much value you can add to something regardless of how old you are. Because sometimes we think we have to be like, and for me, and they laugh at me, because sometimes we think 40 is old when we're young, you gotta be 40 to actually get some stuff done and actually make leeway on certain issues or topics. And especially when we talk about social justice issues, we see some of our mentors, and they're all these great people who are really going out to make the change, and they all tend to seem to be a little older. But we work with young people, and we are young people, and so for me, I'm not as old as most people think because of my Cosby sweater. Just my swag, I like it. But I work alongside other young people as well. I'm 28, and so we work with and for young people. And so that tells you the value of what you can do. Other ways to defeat racism, when we talk about an institutionalized status, get out and run for something. Run for office. When the Board of Trustees opens up, it's an elected seat, unless one of them resign or die. Get out there. Don't be afraid to run. I have a young man, his name is Joel Jones. He's a great friend of mine. He's actually the youngest state rep in the state of Michigan's history from an African-American standpoint, male. And so for him to get out there and run, was something phenomenal. He actually became city councilman of Inkster, making history as the youngest councilman in the city of Inkster. And now he represents parts of Dearborn, Inkster, and a couple other areas out that way. Young guy. He decided to run. He didn't wait till he finished his degree to run. He didn't wait until somebody begged him to run. He had a passion and he ran. We have issues such as women's rights, and we need women to actually step up and to sit on some of those committees. We need men to be voices for our women to sit on some of those committees, and sometimes we have a lack of those when we talk about these issues. When I talk about racism and I fight racism and work on workshops and stuff, I can't do it by myself, and I can't do it with all black people or Latinx people or Asians who are discriminated against, or Muslims, or anything of that nature when we talk about religious discrimination. I actually have to have allies. And my allies don't look like me. The people that I need to come and step up and to work alongside of me and to make phone calls and to do presentations don't look like me. Why? Because sometimes I may not be received well. But hey, if I need to get a point across to a group of young ladies, I may need a young lady to come alongside and say, hey, this is yours. Go ahead, do the speaking. And so when we talk about defeating racism, we just become a part of the system to dismantle the system from within. That makes sense, right? So we don't just try to charge the castle and dismantle it, because we know that it is years and years and years of add-on and add-on and add-on. And so if you're going to kill a tree, you have to go to the roots. And so we try to work on going to the roots of whatever that issue is. Whether it's homophobia, let's get to the root of homophobia. What does that look like? Talk about racism and white supremacy and neo-Nazis now. Lord, let's just pray for them. We talk about the root causes of some of these issues. Again, I talked about it earlier when we talked about the school-to-prison pipeline. It didn't happen overnight. It was years and years and years. When we talk about, a lot of times when we talk about racist issues, and I can talk about Black Lives Matter. And I can yell Black Lives Matter, and somebody will say, well, what about blue lives? What about all lives? And my mindset in going on that is always telling people, never take away from what's in front of you by scapegoating to give another topic. If the topic is homophobia, keep the main thing the main thing. Anybody in this room ever wondered about that when we talk about Black Lives Matter, and you may be in a conversation and you may think, well, they hate police, or, I just like to be transparent on that. Anybody ever had that go through your mind on what Black Lives Matter actually stood for?
Should we close our eyes?
Should we close our eyes? Yeah. Close our eyes. I don't want anybody to feel like they're out there. Now you can raise your hand if you've ever really had that notion of what this group was and what it stood for and how they're making headway and a difference. Okay. I always like to say that. Thank you. You all can open your eyes. Sometimes we don't have the spaces, or we don't have the where to go to have those conversations and dialogues about certain movements. And one of the things, I am a big supporter, I am an advocate for Black Lives Matter. I've participated in the protests and the marches and the conference calls and all of the fun nitty-gritty stuff that we really don't like to do because we should be far enough in society to not do them, but we haven't reached there. And so one of the main misconceptions of Black Lives Matter is that we hate the police. It's a misconception. And that is false. We just do not like police who abuse their power and murder innocent individuals. And at this point, we don't care if they're black, white, blue, pink, yellow, orange. We don't care. Police brutality and people using excessive force is out of the question for us as Black Lives Matter. A lot of times people will say, well, what about all people? And I always like to use the analogy when I go to say Breast Cancer Awareness Month. You come and say, well, what about all cancer? What about leukemia? What about lung cancer? And so we like to make sure when we talk about issues such as Black Lives Matter, that we always keep the main thing. Another issue that we have when we talk about defeating racism, we have a lot of people who scapegoat racism by using statistics and numbers. So we can talk about, again, the police brutality rates and things like that, and what happens when they murder unarmed black men because they are fearful or they felt threatened, which is like the key word to really try to win over your captive audience, to make them pretty much lean to your side that you were in danger. We always hear what about black on black crime? What about black on black crime? And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about black on black crime really quick. Anybody ever heard about white on white crime? Anybody? White on white crime, right? And so when we talk about the alarming number of black on black crimes, we also have to remember the alarming number of black people who live near black people. Like, right? Like when you hear about situations of crime, crimes are generally committed in a radius where there's a population of people that look like you. That's generally the case when we talk about crime. As alarming as it is, we just had an incident recently here in our local community. It wasn't a black on black crime. It wasn't, I would even claim it a white on white crime. It was more of domestic violence. But still, you never really hear the case of what about white on white crime? Which is also, at an alarming rate. So I like to always say that. So if you ever get into a conversation and you're talking about racism or you're talking about Black Lives Matter or you're having that conversation and somebody says, well, what about black on black crime? My always rebuttal is, what about white on white crime? Quick way to get out of that conversation if you just really want to get out of it, because you know that person is going to go somewhere ignorant, because sometimes we also have to shut conversations down. I don't have conversations with everybody about race. I just don't. Number one, it is not your job to technically educate people. It is your job to bring awareness, but it's not your job to educate them. It's their job to come to you to be educated. So, I will never go to somebody and say, I seen you with that Confederate flag, and that Confederate flag means X, Y, Z, and you shouldn't have it. Now, if you give me a public platform like this, I will say that. But I won't just go up to that individual that, I don't know, number one, they could be just crazy, because mental health issues are real in America, and don't want to be put in a position like that. But you always let them come to you or open up the conversation. So, if I had somebody who I didn't know and they were talking about Confederate flags and I actually had that happen, and they just wanted my opinion on it, then I give my input and then I just give them all hell and break it down the way I want to break it down, and pretty much get them to the point where they just want to go ahead and get rid of their flag. So, any questions for me? I said a lot, I know. But any questions, whether it's about experiences or avenues, different forms of racism, don't see here? No?
That email address up there is where...
That email address is my organization's email address. If you have any questions for me, you can email them if you don't want to ask them right now. Also, we are advocates, again. Just because we work with, it says youth, millennials, you fall in that category. So if there are issues where you may be experiencing something here on campus and you don't really want to get involved or you don't want to go into the fight on your own, email me. Because I have no, I don't work here, so Dr. Snyder can't avoid me. I can't get sued and I have no fear because I don't work here. The worst they can do is remove me from a committee and tell me that I can't plan the Martin Luther King Day celebration. Which, they don't want to do that. So, I can be the mouthpiece for you. I have a team of people who can be the mouthpiece for you. No matter what your issue is, when it comes to discrimination, stereotyping, racism, homophobia, anything like that, email me. If you don't want to put it in the suggestion box, you don't want to have your name attached to it, email me. I do work closely with our local NAACP. I advise the current president a lot, and we are on issues like white on rice. We will get on it. We will make sure that whatever your need is, it is addressed. Now, we don't always get the results we want. So if you email me, know that I'm going to speak up for you, but the results may not always be what you want, so don't come trying to hunt me down. Come to Alphonso, you said in that on the 15th of November that you would go and help with this issue. And sometimes we try our best. And so please feel free to use that email for anything. Again, if you yourself are looking for a femtor or mentor, I believe in making sure that that can happen. Our organization works with ages up to 25 as we work with young college students currently. Email that if you have interest in wanting a femtor or mentor. In this case, a femtor is just a woman mentor, so you didn't catch that. Let us know that as well. We can make sure that happens.
So I know the students in here are heading into final exams coming up in December and so forth, and probably now is not the time to be joining a new student group or some sort of movement. But if you were inspired at all today, go ahead and send that email. And then maybe in January, think about really getting involved and doing what you want to do to make things happen. Or now, if you can, but we realize, this is getting busy, so.
It is. And again, if you're interested in joining Young People For, that it actually takes place in the summertime, your training. We do a national summit, which is generally Martin Luther King Day weekend. And they pay for everything. You don't pay for nothing, except for your dinners. But they even have money for that too. So if you are interested in that fellowship, don't be deterred. Applications are open now. And we literally have over 10,000 students throughout the United States actually apply to this. So please get involved. Anybody really into politics in here? Anybody watch any politics? So the person who started this program is actually running for governor of Florida right now. His name's Andrew Gillum. He's a great guy. He's phenomenal. And that program is also ran by all young people, like ourselves. And so really, if you're interested, let me know, because I want to make sure you're connected. I am the only fellow in the St. Clair County Blue Water area, and it's sometimes difficult when you don't have anybody that's working on a project like you to communicate with. So please feel free to ask me that afterwards as well. I'll be sticking around a little bit. That's all I have if you all don't have any questions.